Hey folks, in this video, let's talk about the three Indias in the context of income and spending power. A recent report from Bloom Ventures shed some light on the spending power of 1.4 billion Indians. Many news outlets latched onto one headline: 1 billion Indians have no money to spend on discretionary goods and services. That is, 1 billion Indians out of 1.4 billion can afford to spend only on essentials: food, shelter, clothing, and then they have no money left to spend on something that they want. It is true. I think indirectly what they're trying to say is that all the talk about India's GDP growth, India being the fastest growing major economy and all, should it be taken seriously or is it all just hype? Let's try and figure out. The report talks about the three Indias. One India, of course, are those 1 billion people that have GDP or income per capita of $1,000. We are talking about average numbers, of course. India's overall GDP per capita is much higher than $1,000. This is the group that the report terms as India 3. It has almost two-thirds of India's total population. Now, if we compare India 3 to a nation or a geographic region, it will resemble sub Saharan African countries. This is the group that has those 800 million Indians that are receiving free food, rice, and wheat under government scheme. Then there is the second group, India 2. It has around 300 million people with GDP per capita of $3,000. These are reluctant spenders. They do spend on discretionary items, but they are cost conscious. If we are to compare India to with a nation, it will resemble Indonesia. Not quite, because Indonesia have a little higher GDP per capita, but then there is no other nation that has a population of around 300 million and GDP per capita of around $3,000. Finally, there is the third group, India 1. It has around 135 million people with GDP or income per capita of $15,000. If we treat India 1 as a nation, it already is a high income country. According to World Bank, I think a nation with GDP per capita of over $14,500 can be classified as a high income nation. This group, if we are to compare it with a nation, it will resemble Mexico. Although Mexico has a lower GDP per capita, this is the consuming class of India. This is the group that is driving most of the consumption in India. One more thing to note here: look at the households or families. So each group, you can see the number of people that are in each group, but there are roughly a little more than 4 people per household or per family. So these are the number of households in each group. And one thing that stands out: in a nation of 1.4 billion people or 140 crore people, the taxpayers are very few. In total, 7.5 crore Indians file taxes. And of those, only about 2.5 crore, a little less than 3 crore, pay taxes. So I'm assuming, just looking at these numbers, the tax filers are mostly from India 1 and India 2, and taxpayers, the people who actually pay tax, are from India 1 group. Anyways, the major problem with the Indian economy has been the fact that this group, India 1, has been driving most of the consumption since 2019-2020, courtesy a K-shaped recovery where a select few at the top continue to do well while the rest fall behind. So you can see there are three distinct Indias that are living inside one country. There are three different nations that are in one country. And maybe that's why there are as many differing opinions on Indian economy as there are people in India. Now, to elaborate a bit more on India 3, the World Bank came out with a report recently acknowledging that over the last 10 years, 170 million Indians have been lifted out of poverty. And during the same time period, the number of people living in extreme poverty has dropped to almost 2%. That still means roughly 30 million Indians are still living in extreme poverty, and hopefully that will change soon. So, yes, 1 billion Indians have no money to spend on discretionary goods and services. At the same time, in the last 10 years, 170 million Indians have been lifted out of poverty. While the story of India 3 is true, India 2 and India 1 are also there. Deloitte India came out with a report recently in which they projected that the number of Indians earning $10,000 a year will go up to 165 million by 2030. Total consumption in the Indian economy that doubled in the last 10 years is expected to double again by 2030. Does that mean India 1 will widen? We'll see. There are multiple cross currents that are flowing with respect to the Indian economy, but I do agree no Indian should live in extreme poverty. India 3 needs to shrink as India 2 and India 1 expand. I hope you found this analysis interesting. I'll speak with you again next week. Until then, take care.